What's up, everybody? It's time to do another book review, and today we're doing a really cool book from Osprey Publishing that I think you're going to enjoy if you grew up around comic books or you just grew up around superheroes and that kind of stuff, and we had all those comic books back in the day, and we just really got into them. You're going to like this book. This one is D-Day. This is the Under Fire series. It's a fantastic series from Osprey Publishing. This is one of the books that they have in that series. This is Storming Fortress Europe. And I read through this a couple weeks ago, and I want to give you my synopsis of the book right now in about the next 10 minutes or so. So before I go through that, I would love for you to go down below, slap that subscribe button, hit that bell so that you know when I'm going to be posting new content here on YouTube. We're working hard to grow this brand here on YouTube, and I would really appreciate your help to do so. So go on down there, hit that subscribe button, and hit that bell so you know when a new video comes up or when I go live, which I often do here on YouTube. Now, I was always a big fan of comic books growing up, and I really got into the storylines, the art, and it was just fantastic for me to grow up in the 90s when comic books were still coming around and they were a big thing back in the day. Now, of course, there's a resurgence in that, which is just fantastic for people like me who are still kids at heart. But having things like this as a historian in your arsenal is an amazing resource. I look at this as a tool to introduce new people to the historical narrative, especially younger people to the historical narrative. I'm in my 40s, and I still love reading the graphic novel style of history, just like this one. And this has a lot to offer because this isn't just the American perspective of D-Day in this format. This isn't just the British perspective or the Axis perspective. This is everyone involved in some form or fashion. You're going to see the Americans. You're going to see the Brits. You're going to see the French. You're going to see French civilians. You're going to see the Germans. And I really like how it's rounded like that. It's a great little book. And to begin with, what they do right off the top is they give you a great introduction to D-Day. So you need to have this historical background when you're looking through all this. This is what connects people to the past, right? They need to look at this. They need to see what's going on. They need to understand that. So this introduction to D-Day is just a quick 3-page synopsis of D-Day. That's about the quickest D-Day synopsis you're going to get. And it's here in this book. So it is just an elementary kind of way of looking at the campaign, looking at the battle to come. But it's still a great introduction, right? This tells people this is a true story to some extent. This is based on a true story, right? Like we see when we go to the movie and it's just based on a true story. But you get the idea. It also gives these amazing drawings of the beaches. And I really appreciated the aerial views of the beaches. You get to see the contours of the landscapes. You get to see if there are buildings there or not, what kind of beaches they have there in northern France on the Normandy coast. It's just a great way to introduce this stuff to the masses. And then you start getting into the stories. Of course, you start with the airborne operation. This thing goes basically in chronological order. And you're going to start with the airborne. You're going to go into the initial landings on the beachheads, and the story progresses much like a documentary would progress. That's why I like this book. It's basically a small documentary in book form, although we know that these stories in here are somewhat true, could be true, but they get your attention. And of course, the art in here is fantastic. It's just like we had back in the day. It's very vibrant. It's very colorful. It's just the style is amazing in here, and I really, really appreciate it. The one thing that really caught my eye with it was that this was put out by Osprey Publishing, and Osprey is known for putting out some amazing books involving the historical narrative. So when I picked this up originally, it was like, wow, okay, Osprey brought this out in 2020. This must be something I need to look at and take notice of as a historian. Some historians would look at this and they would just throw it to the side and say, well, what am I going to do with that? When in my case, I'm like, how can I use this as a tool for the educational process? Some student is going to pay more attention to this to get that curiosity sparked within them than perhaps going and reading some mega monograph that's 350 pages long to start out with. You need to start out somewhere. This is a great place to start. Like I said, this was published in 2020. The writers were Jack Chambers and Eric Hendricks. The artists were Esteve Poles, IHQ Studios, George Papadakis, Kostas Siakos, and Jason Barodi. So there's great authors, good quality history as far as, this is based on a historical event. So there's going to be artistic license, especially with the text. And you're going to look through it and you're going to see just the general landscape, so to speak, of the D-Day campaign. This isn't a history book per se. And that's why I think some historians just gloss it over and they toss it to the side. When in actuality, we can see this like a video game. We can see it as something that can have meaning for what we have in our toolbox for students of history. This could be a way for us to garner attention to the historical narrative in different ways. I think if you have a huge tool belt around your waist where you can bring out all this stuff and say, well, if this doesn't appeal to you, let's try this. If this doesn't work for you cognitively, let's try this. That's where you start to see more of the historical narrative coming across. And when you have a book like this, it really puts things in a lot of perspective. But the art is fantastic. It's just really easy to read and go through. And like I said, if you grew up with comic books, if you're into comic books now, if you're into graphic novels, this is fantastic. And I really like how the stories are all encompassing. Like I said, you're going to have some American stories in here. You're going to have some British stories. You're going to have some German stories. You're going to have French civilians and their interactions with the people who are coming to liberate Europe. It's just a fascinating way of looking at it, a great thing. It goes from the high command on both sides of the equation, the Axis and the Allies. So you get a little bit of background on that. And the main thing to remember here is that when you are looking at a monograph such as this or a book such as this, you're going to want to remember that, one, based on a true story. So there's going to be artistic license. There's going to be artistic license with not only the art, but with the wording. Two, you're going to have to just remember that this is a stepping stone. This is a way for some people to be introduced to the historical narrative. And this is a way for some people who have been reading constantly about facts and figures and key events and the minutia of a campaign. This is a way to kind of mix it up and say, let's have some fun for a little bit. Let's take these few hundred pages in this book and mix it up a little bit. Keep it entertaining to an extent. Remember, we as historians have to think about that when we are doing things. It has to be entertaining, but also factual. This may not be completely factual as far as the things that are said within it. We don't know what this person may have said at that time, but we're only speculating on it. But the art and the imagination starts to collide and allows you to think of things in different ways. As far as when I read the actual text, maybe the art is going to be what pops up in my head of what this scenario looked like. And granted, it's not as good as, having photographs of the moment, but it allows that curiosity to spark within you. I really, really enjoyed this book. Now, this is part of a series, as I said at the beginning of the video. There are other books out by Osprey in this series. The D-Day is one of them, D-Day. Another one is the Battle for Guadalcanal and a Battle of Britain. So if you're into the Pacific Theater, you're going to want to check out the Guadalcanal book. If you're into aviation history, you're going to want to check out the Battle of Britain book. So there's a 3-part series as of now. There may be more coming out. I haven't heard just yet, but I'm really, really happy with this book. I enjoyed it as something different. You can go and you can read Cornelius Ryan's The Longest Day. You can read things by Rick Atkinson and such. But this is something nice to have where it just breaks up some of the really heavy things that we discuss and we talk about. And remember your audience. If you're a historian who's doing a lot of interpretation, you also have to be somewhat entertaining. This is a great way to get ideas for that aspect. Maybe you're going to want to put up almost a storyboard format with some of these pictures that are in here, some of the art that's in here. Utilize that to your advantage. There are different ways to construct the historical narrative around books like this. I don't want you as a historian just to ignore these things. These could influence how people see the past, and it's up to us as historians to say, okay, you read this and you saw this in there. Now let's talk about the factual evidence behind that, and you can start to connect it. Remember, it's just like gaming. We could be playing the latest video game that involves the Second World War or D-Day, but we can use that as a stepping stone instead of saying, well, this is exactly how it was, or this is terrible stuff. We can say, well, what's wrong about it? What's correct about it? Same thing here. It's still art, just like video game art or anything like that. But we can use that to our advantage. Don't ignore this stuff as a historian. If you are into just comic books, if you're into graphic novels, you're not too much into history, that's fine. You're still going to enjoy this. It's a great story inside here. Series of stories. Each chapter is a series. So you're going to want to check that out as well. But I really, really liked this book from Osprey. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars when I reviewed it. I think it's fantastic. I've been telling other people, especially those who are in the reenacting world and interpretive worlds, just to pick it up, get some ideas from it. Like I said, a few of my friends have started to think about using it in a storyboard format. So you never know what may come of it. Keep that curiosity going. Keep that imagination flowing. And you're going to have a better understanding of the past, because that curiosity sparks the need to go after those more heavy monographs, those more intensive books, and say, okay, I want to learn what's actually behind this scenario that I saw in this, if it even took place. And I think that really comes to light in a book such as this. You're not going to want to ignore it. You want to go out and check this one out from Osprey. D-Day, Under Fire. This is the first volume out of that Storming Fortress Europe. Go check it out, guys. I don't think you're going to be disappointed. And if you like this video, remember, there are going to be tons of book reviews coming, because I'm consistently getting things from publishers who want me to review their books. And we're going to have many more videos coming up here in the future concerning books that are like this one and like others that you may have seen me interview authors about. Big monographs from university presses, from other places that come to me in the mail. You never know where these books are coming from, but that's the beauty of being a historian. You never know where the books are going to come from. But I really think you're going to like this D-Day book from Osprey. It's a lot of fun, as in you get to use that curiosity. You get to whet your appetite on history, and you get to have different kind of stories to go along, especially if you are a fan of comic books like I was way back when. This is reigniting that spark again, where I can think about what it was like being a teenager and getting that Ghost Rider book or that Punisher comic book back in the day. You're going to want to check this one out. Thanks for joining me on this book review. This is just a quick review series I'm going to be coming out with. As we go deeper into some of these larger scale books coming up, we're going to have a much deeper discussion about what is fact and fiction, how the prose is, how do we find the evidence behind this. There is much more to come here on the Tattooed Historian channel here on YouTube. Remember, go down below, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell, and I thank you so much for checking us out on this particular video. Take care, everybody.